Gretel with Sunny Meadows Flower Farm here, taking over Instagram for the Gardener's Workshop Farm. This is Ask a Flower Farm, but we're also going to kind of do a little farm tour. So if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the comments and I will answer them as we go. And we'll also kind of just walk around and show you what's going on in the greenhouses right now. You know, we're in the transition of season, so we typically have flowers from March through about Thanksgiving, and then we do Christmas wreaths. So this is like the end of the cut flowers, but what we've got going on in here is like our stock plants and ranunculus that will bloom for spring. So we'll kind of show you a little bit of everything. So we're here in Columbus, Ohio. We're zone 6A. We have greenhouses that are both heated and unheated, and then we teach a class with Lisa called Growing Cut Flowers and Hoop and Greenhouses. And so that is specifically talking about extending the season, what kind of greenhouses to choose. We've got a bunch of different kinds of greenhouses. This one I'm standing in right now is a big gutter connect. This is like our seed house that I'm currently in. We've got some that we bought new and some that we bought used from an auction. So you'll see a lot of different like styles and shapes and stuff just based on where we bought them from. And we talk a lot about that in the class too, like getting them from an auction or buying them used, the deconstruction and reconstruction and like what to consider and where you're putting it. So if you have any questions so far, I'll just keep going. Okay, so these are our mom's stock plants, so we'll keep these over the winter and take all of our cuttings for the next year. So we're in the process of like refining the selection. Every year is a little bit different. So these all get cut back and then they're just kind of dormant for the winter, but we do usually let them flower out just to confirm that it is the variety that we want them to be. Mums are triggered by short days, so that's why they're flowering now. We've got some lights set up for in the winter when things need light. Really the only thing that we'll add light to is Lizzie's when they need them, or if we're trying to keep things from flowering during the winter, we want vegetative growth. We've got some eucomis over here, some other cuttings, and then all this stuff are things that are going to be planted for spring bloom. So we've got snaps. Easter is really early this year. It's the earliest it can be, being March 31st. Which means that crop planting changes every year based on Easter. So we're not sure if these snaps are going to be early enough, but we always try to hit that holiday. Sometimes when Easter is middle of April, it's like no problem at all to get stuff to bloom by that time. But end of March is a little bit hard in our zone. We're just not very sunny in the winter, and we don't add light to like anything that we grow in beds. And the houses are mostly minimally heated, so they're just going to grow like low and slow for the winter, and then hopefully bloom in time for Easter. But Mother's Day is our biggest floral holiday we can hit within our season, so Easter's kind of the kickoff of the season. Usually stuff starts blooming March, like kind of middle of March. Just depends on the kind of winter that we have. And snaps are one of the hardest things we found to try to time. It's like even if they hit spot on one year and you do exactly the same thing, sometimes if the weather is different, you know, it's sunnier or cloudier or colder, it just kind of depends. So whenever we're trying to hit a holiday, we'll always like plant some before and plant some after that specific week. So this is actually 2 different weeks of snaps here, so that you can see the smaller ones and the bigger ones. We're trying to grow some status this year. We'll see if that works to have for the spring holidays. I tried to get in some of that like tissue culture fancy varieties, but our order wasn't big enough to like get a special order of it in for this timing. But I know somebody's growing it in the winter because we've been able to order it in the spring as a cut. So these benches roll. This is another thing we got from the auction. So this just means that we have less space in the walkways. Our hoses are hung up on like a on a line, and then we have a little trolley here. That's what we use to like move flats up and down in the greenhouse. So when we're loading like a vehicle, getting ready for planting, or just like moving stuff around, you know, there's always a Tetris game in here. Right now it's not very full, but you know, come spring, every like square inch in here will be full. And this is a heated bench that we built. It's built with a hot water heater, and it has tubes that run underneath the bench. And so, you know, things will germinate on this bench because we keep the greenhouse a little bit cooler. This helps us get that heat that the seeds need, and then things get moved off of the bench. So, you know, there's a lot of moving stuff around. We've got some stock here that will hopefully be ready for Easter. That's another one that we're trying. And then a lot of ranunculus. They're actually planting ranunculus today, so some of it has been pulled out of the greenhouse already. We do butterfly. When we start our butterfly, we put them in 21. These are like deep 21 cell flats because they're too big to go into like a 50. Some of those like butterfly ranunculus forms are really huge, and they're like long. So having them be the deep trays helps. You just have to make sure that you're not over watering them, so they don't want to stay wet. So when you start your ranunculus in flats like we do, and we talk about this in the class a lot too, you want to like soak the corms, plant them in the trays, give them a good watering, and then not really water them again until they look dry, so that you're not like encouraging mold. So you can kind of see on these flats what this variety, which is they reuse the tag, so I can't read the tag, but one of them that we saved has some mold growing on the top, so that means that these corms in here are slimy and not going to produce. So let's not use that one as an example, but most of them germinated really well and are really nice. We are working mostly with corms that we saved ourselves, and if any of you have seen, you know, we sell fall bulbs online. We do actually still have some ranunculus and stuff available. This one that did not germinate well is not in the varieties that we sell, but we always kind of test them out ourselves. Dahlia tubers. It's like we're trying to find the ones that are good tuber producers, good flower producers, good stem length, good vase life, like having kind of like a curated selection of all of our like favorites. So yeah, and you can see some of the ranunculus have like different leaf structures, but yeah, these will all go in. These first few plantings, we break them up between heated and unheated space, and that helps succession the ranunculus in the spring. So it'll start in March, and then we usually have ranunculus blooming until end of May. Sometimes we can get to like the first week of June. It just depends on if it gets 90 degrees in May, then the ranunculus is going to shut down because it's a cool weather crop. You got any questions? Okay. These are anemones. This is a little bit more green growth than I would want on them going out, but we needed time to flip beds. So these are actually going into a heated space. If they were going unheated, I definitely wouldn't want this much growth because the foliage would die back, and then you'd have some mold issues or botrytis. So you want to, when you start them in flats, get them sprouted, but not have like a ton of growth like this. So okay, let's go this way. I'm just going to show you real quick our tuber storage area. It's kind of loud in here because the fans are on, but so we store farm tubers in here. These will be the first ones to be divided. Most of them are stored in our cooler, and then we put this row cover over them just to keep them out of the sun so they don't dry out too much. But what we found is in the greenhouse, this is heated is that there is enough of like an air exchange, and also like it helps regulate the moisture. So, that's one of the biggest things about tuber storage is the moisture level. So you want to make sure that they're not too dry that they're shriveling out, but not too moist that there's mold growing on them. And actually this year we did not clean these tubers in the field with the same idea as like storage potatoes, of like leaving the dirt on them to protect the skin for as long as possible. And then they'll kind of get cleaned a little bit as we divide them. But we don't wash them off. Some growers do. But what we want is that dirt to harden on there. And so that way any little root hairs that are there have the chance to kind of naturally like die off instead of being washed and like exposed as far as drying out. So yeah, there's a lot going on in here. I think we dug 1,800 crates of tubers. So last year we had 1,100. So it was a really good tuber year. I think leaving them dirty also meant that they took up a little bit more space. We just happened to have good weather. Sometimes it's muddy and you have to clean them off some because otherwise the crates are just so heavy coming out of the field. But we are actually on Sunny Meadows Flower Farm Instagram. We are in the middle of posting like a multi-part series about our dahlia tuber digging, and our tubers go on sale on Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, we'll project what we think we're going to have minus what we want to plant. We do a lot of dahlia cuttings too to like increase the volume of the ones that we want to sell a lot of, and that's how we increase like the number of tubers for those highly like sought after varieties. So those ones that are going to get potted up to do cuttings of, we usually start potting them up for the end of the year. So sometimes it's around Thanksgiving, other times it just depends on how much time we have. We're making holiday stuff and dried flowers and things. And then we've got some eucalyptus here that we're overwintering in pots in the heated house. So because spring holidays are so important to us, we are trying multiple different trials with eucalyptus. We have some that we're overwintering in a heated house that was in the ground this year, some that we're overwintering in an unheated house, some that we potted up fresh into pots for heat, just to kind of figure out the timing that's best for what is actually going to like be ready for the spring holidays.
I do have a question about unheated high tunnels.
Yeah.
In zone 5B, normally they put out cool flowers 5 weeks before the last frost. How far forward should I be able to put them out in the tunnel?
So it depends on what flowers, but we are planting ranunculus today in unheated structures that will bloom in April. So and we talk a lot about this in the class, like a lot of the week numbers. So like for, ranunculus, you can do it now, and then the roots kind of grow through winter. The foliage won't grow until it sort of like takes off for the spring. But like snaps and stock, that kind of stuff going out into the unheated. Zone 5B, you're a little bit colder than us, so you may need to like double cover some things, but we can usually put snaps and stock out like week 8 to 10. So, you won't know for your specific like zone and location exactly what, because it just also depends on how sunny you are. Because if you're sunnier, like today is beautiful. We're kind of getting a bonus day today. And so it's sunny, so it's really warm in these greenhouses, even though they're minimally heated. So, and that's something else we talk a lot about in the class is like, ventilation, and also just like the fluctuation of temperature. Like if you're getting really hot during the day and then it's freezing at night, then the plants are kind of confused of like, if they should be growing in the hot, should they like be dormant in the cold? So by like venting and having fresh like cold air come in, you kind of want to like regulate that temperature. So, but I would definitely try it. I mean, that's how we figured out that we could put stock in an unheated house week 8, and it does need double covered with row cover, but is because one year we were out of greenhouse space and we did it and it worked. So You never know until you try it. And if you are taking our class, you know, we do talk specifically about the week numbers that work for us. If you are in another zone, you know, you may need to adjust by like a week or two, just kind of depending on, you know, which direction you go. But I know that like for our friends at Three Porch down in Georgia, like they're in a warmer zone than us, but they still might get like a late frost outside in the spring, you know, so like their week numbers are pretty similar to ours, even though they are like in a warmer zone. So if you have growers in your region that you can talk to like get some of that, like, you know, learning from their experience, or just trial and error, which is what most of our stuff has been. And that's why with our class we try to talk about, you know, all the things that we've learned along the way, and like problems that we have, so that way you kind of like have those as references to talk about those. I think we're gonna have to go down and come back because that door locks from the outside. So I just wanted to show you this house. This is kind of like what's in production right now. Like I said, flowers usually go through Thanksgiving, so this is kind of the end. This bed here is a new trial for us. This bed is like always grows really shitty plants, and it has to do with the drainage, and that's something else we talk about. So when the water comes down from the edge, even when our soil is very wet, the water table is very high, especially in the winter. And so the water comes in, and it almost seems like it rains from the ground up. So even if the sides are down and the water's shedding off the edge, the way that it collects, it comes in and it kind of pools along the edge. So what we're doing here is we're making a raised bed. So we are ordering in like soil and compost and making a mix and putting them in here just to see if we can get this bed to produce more. Because especially things that get like water mold issues, like when a house is shaped like this, it makes sense for something short to be on the outside edge. So we kept putting like Dusty Miller here. Well, that gets Phytophthora, which doesn't like it wet, and so that's when the disease really is proliferous, is when the bed is wet. And so the fact that this is a wet bed just meant like a lot of disease issues. So we're hoping that this will mitigate some of those issues. This house is heated, so this cabbage is like enormous. These are poinsettias, which this is like a new thing for us this year. These are the cut poinsettias. If you follow Ellen from Local Color Flowers, who's another teacher with the Gardener's Workshop, one of her growers does these cut poinsettias. So this is a trial for us. They're growing in the ground. Some of them are starting to turn red down there, which is exciting. But we really, in the fall, like in the winter, we usually just have like cabbage and sticks. So having poinsettias, and then we're also growing some amaryllis and prick trays, just to try to have some stuff to kind of like support those things for Christmas. These are begonias that we grow for cut for the foliage. So they're planted in the spring. Centenarians, and then some snaps that will hopefully be ready for Christmas. That's another thing in the fall. You know, it's like we always try to hit Thanksgiving and Christmas. Well, Thanksgiving ones bloomed in October, and the Christmas ones look like they might make it. We're just gonna have to see what happens. So this is a heated structure here, and it has a ridge vent for ventilation. We're gonna walk over to the other big house. This house here was just prepped yesterday. So bed prep is another thing that we talk about in the class. Some of the beds were prepped yesterday, but we got some ornithogalum and freesia planted in here. So we do steam our beds, and that is something that is more of an advanced thing, but something that we found necessary because our soil is wet and it does harbor some disease. So yeah, the class goes anywhere from like beginner stuff to advanced stuff. So whenever we're talking about like week numbers, you know, we're giving everything, every planting date that we have, but we do also say you know, if you're just starting, this is the week like this is the planting date that I would start with. Or if you are more advanced, you've got some heated structures, you want to add in more successions, like here's all the successions that we do. Yellow jacket. These are 3-season structures, so the plastic comes off of them in the winter because they don't, the bows are further apart and they do not hold a snow load. So there's some more cabbage in there. So those are more used in the summer for like protection from the elements. They are from season extension. We got a lot of empty beds happening right now because we're doing as much bed prep as we can before our H2A folks go home for the winter because they leave next week. This is our soil steamer, and the steam goes out the pipe and down into the tarp, which is held down by chains, and then the steam is held into the soil. So it gets up to temperature, and then they turn the steamer off, and then it's held at that temperature for about an hour. And that is basically the same idea as like pasteurizing milk, like getting rid of the bad bacteria. And then we're going back in with like root shield or Terra Grow and adding in some of the like beneficial bacteria back to the soil before we plant in there. And that has really helped us with issues with downy mildew, fusarium, and phytophthora. Now, you know, we still have problems with botrytis in the winter because that's airborne, but the soil-borne diseases, that's definitely been a big help. And the bonus is it also gives us some weed control. Okay, so this is what we got going on for Thanksgiving. That heater's really loud, so I'll try and talk louder. We got a lot of marigolds, so we do try to be like the cultural like source here at Columbus for marigolds for Dia de los Muertos and Diwali. So they're like really important for us to have in the greenhouse because the ones outdoor are usually dead by now. So there's multiple beds of marigolds in here. They just planted ranunculus today. They were steaming yesterday, so that's what these tarps are. There's some gomphorina that's probably not going to make it in time because the planting that was supposed to go in here for Thanksgiving accidentally got planted in the field because the transplanters were just like, you know, in the mode of getting everything planted they possibly could. So I wasn't sure if this was going to hit. Looks like there's a little bit, but these are the snaps, which we just picked the rest of for like next week. And a lot of dusty. So we'll overwinter some dusty in the greenhouse so that we have dusty for the spring holidays. Because if you plant it now, like little plants, then sometimes they don't make it in time and they're maybe not ready till later in the spring. So this allows us to have foliage for like Easter and Mother's Day bouquets. This is the biggest house we have. This was one that was bought at an auction and repurposed. So that's also why things are very loud in here, so we can go in another greenhouse. So I can answer some questions if there are any. Hard to even hear yourself. Yeah, this one will be better. This is our mom's house, so we've been cutting we grow a whole house of mums. There's some eucalyptus in here too. We'll be cut back, but you can kind of see we're at the tail end of mum's season. So tomorrow and Friday, actually, they'll pick most of what's in here for Thanksgiving, like sales next week. Usually our local florist delivery is on Wednesday, but that's too late for Thanksgiving week. So most of our deliveries go out on Monday next week. So that takes us starting Thursday and Friday just to make sure we get everything picked and bunched and orders pulled. Yeah, so the ends of these beds have been picked quite a lot. These are all the mums that came from our stock plants that were in the first house when we started. And you can see some of the areas are accidentally mixed, so that's why we let the stock plants like bloom out just to make sure. These light ones down here are still blooming and they look nice, so I think they're good on here. another bed of eucalyptus that we're going to overwinter. This was planted this year, and then we'll leave it in here in hopes that we'll get more production in the spring next year. This variety is called Pat Lawson. Looks like there's some Mount Shasta mixed in there too, but yeah, so we're working on, roguing out some of the other varieties, refining the selection, because I think we're going to sell mum cuttings this year also. We're working on that just to make sure that they are true to name and, are the best plants that we can choose. So before we rip this out, before everything's cut and before we rip it out, we'll go through and dig some more stock plants for us, just to make sure we've got enough of all the varieties. There's a lot of debris in this house, but typically we do not strip. Looks like they have been with the mums, but typically we don't strip the foliage in the greenhouse, just to help with disease and stuff, so that you don't have a lot of debris in the house. Especially with Lisianthus, it's really important because of the fusarium pressure that you can get for those plants. You got some questions?
Yes. Will this year's class have live Q&As?
I don't know. I don't believe so. I think that we're using the Facebook group as that. So, if you were to tag me, then I could answer your question. But all the past Q&As are, in the class as, bonus content, too. So there's a lot of questions that, have been answered. But, yeah, they're in the process of changing the format of the class so that it is more on demand and not just one specific time of the year. But there's a Facebook group that your classmates can answer or I can answer, so that I will be in there weekly, and I usually will post resources. If somebody's specifically asking about crop planning, then I can post an Excel sheet or something that we use in there, and so we use that group kind of as our form of communication.
Is there bonus material if they sign up?
Yeah, there is bonus material. So if you sign up this week, you will also get 33 handouts that come with it. So everything that we've created for the Gardener's Workshop kind of as material that gets sent out to our newsletter. So if you are haven't been on the newsletter for a while, then you will receive all those handouts. So that's our list of favorite mums, the lily varieties we like, the pre-chilled tulip varieties we like, our favorite summer annuals, ranunculus and anemones and suppliers. So it's a lot of what varieties we're growing, and that is again just about, we've been doing this now for 17 years, so it's not only about what we like, it's about what our florists like, what has the best stem length, the best vase life, just learning over the years. And maybe your market is different based on where you are, who you're selling to. For us with the mums, our designers love these ones that kind of spill over, and are more open like that. The grocery stores, not as much, because people think that maybe they're wilting. So it just kind of depends on your market and what your competition is doing too. So with the mums, we try to grow all varieties that are specialty varieties, not one that they could get from the wholesaler, because mums, for florists to buy, the typical standard mums are pretty cheap, and these in our zone, we grow them in the heat. We have grown some in unheated, but sometimes with the condensation dripping on them, you get to this point and then they all get ruined from cold condensation dripping into that cup, and so that's why we grow them in the heat. So the cost of production is higher, and so we want to be able to charge the price we need to make it worth it to grow them in the heat. And so that's why we try and focus on specialty varieties. But the same thing with tulips. We want to grow things that people can't get otherwise, and so all of those lists are in the handouts. And one of the bonus videos also is about enterprise budgets. So that's something else like that we talk about of like, this is the most expensive square foot area. So making sure that you have the crops in here that are going to give you that return to make sense for you to be heating it, or even if it's unheated, the like labor of covering and uncovering the beds and venting the sides, and you know, the plant management through the winter when it is cloudy and cold. And if you don't have a hydrant in your house, like we've dug hydrants to all of our houses because we got sick of draining hoses in the winter. So it's like if things need watered and it's going to freeze, then you have to drain all those hoses. So like it's a lot of work growing stuff in the winter. And it's funny because people are like, oh, you're a farmer, you must take a vacation, you're in the winter. And you're like, actually, that's kind of when like things need the most management if you're a greenhouse grower. So it's a little bit easier for us actually to get away in the summer when there's not all of these things, sides need rolled up and down, and like the heaters checked and stuff like that. So yeah, is there any questions? How much time is there?
It's 101.
Okay,
We did it.
cool. Yay. Well, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed our little tour of what we got going on here at Sunny Meadows. Our class is for sale on the Gardener's Workshop. This week you get all the bonus material if you sign up, and our Dahlia Tuber sale goes live on Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. There's always a lot going on this time of year. We just launched our holiday stuff as well. So yeah, the team's been busy getting ready, putting the farm to bed for winter, getting all the beds prepped, getting things planted for spring, and yeah, holiday time. So thanks for joining.